our hearts as investment professionals. The tax reform law for acceleration and inclusion, or as we all know, the TRAIN law. Proponents say that the TRAIN will further strengthen our macroeconomic position to create an environment more conducive to high growth and investment, good job creation, and faster poverty reduction.
On the other hand, which all economists are required to say, they warn that some contrivance warn that trade can deliver negative effects on the economy, and in the divisiveness that the recently enacted tax reform brought about, one unifying view mattered. All I know is that the withholding tax on my monthly payments changed a little bit, but I won't tell you what, or else you'll be able to divide my tax bracket. But anyway, I'll let our experts speak on that.
So our last speaker for the day is Undersecretary for the Strategy, Economics, and Results Group in the Department of Finance. In this capacity, he helps the government achieve its 10-point socioeconomic agenda by ensuring equitable and sustainable financing through tax reform. Prior to joining the government, he was the senior country economist of the World Bank for the Philippines. In this capacity, he advised the government on strategies and policies to attain more inclusive growth, the type that creates more and better jobs and reduces poverty. He was with the World Bank for 12 years from 2004 to 2016.
He completed his Master's in Economics in 2003 and PhD in Economics in 2011 at the University of the Philippines School of Economics, where he specialized in fiscal policy and tax administration. Prior to joining the World Bank, he was Assistant Professor Lecturer of Mathematics and Economics at the Ateneo de Manila University, where he also completed his Bachelor of Science in Management Engineering in 2000. He was a consultant for several local and development partner-funded projects in the area of economic and fiscal policy. His first job was in Anderson Consulting as a systems analyst. He is married and with one child. His hobby is in astronomy, and he has a little boy named after a star, Keith. Ladies and gentlemen, Undersecretary Karl Kendrick Chua. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Good afternoon to everyone. There's just a disconnect because I never took the bar in the, but that's very minor. I apologize for this slight delay in my arrival due to a budget hearing that we are required to attend, and I did not go. Judging from the audience, some have gave up after many hours of presentations. Some maybe are hungry. Some do not like me because of the topic. I hope not. But thank you for those who stayed, because I think this is a very important topic concerning your lives and, more importantly, your children or grandchildren. My presentation today is going to cover several packages, not only the first or the second, but also the third and the fourth, which I think matter a lot to most of you. This tax reform is special because for the first time we are not doing a tax reform because we are in a crisis. Unlike previous, such as the VAT reform of 2004. It's also the first time we are doing this reform where there is no external pressure telling us what to do. Not the IMF, the World Bank, the Paris Club. In fact, we don't need the tax reform if we want to just be satisfied with the business as usual. But this government is not satisfied. This is the first tax reform where the objective is not to reduce deficits and debt, but poverty and inequality. By 2022, we want to see our country reduce poverty rate from 21.6 to around 14%, lifting 6 million Filipinos out of poverty. And we want to see this country become an upper middle income country, like Thailand and China today. By 2040, one generation from today, we would like to eradicate extreme poverty and join the ranks of advanced nations, like Malaysia and South Korea today. And there's no shortcut. We want to grow sustainably beyond our 6% by investing massively in infrastructure, social services, and in productivity. There are two ways to fund that because no money comes from heaven for free. You borrow or you raise your own equity. In this case, internally generated tax revenues. For this year and the next few years, majority of that will be borrowed. But we have to put up our equity, and that is a tax reform. So I will discuss today the story behind this tax reform, why we are doing this, what are the key misconceptions, and what I think would be the future that awaits us if we support and see this tax reform come to reality. There are many ways to raise the money we need and to achieve our vision, also from non-tax reforms, but let me just summarize some of them. Contrary to perception, we are not just doing tax policy reform. We are also doing administration reforms, budget reforms, and we continue to borrow sustainably. And this tax reform, this package of tax reform, or rather this set of 5 packages of tax reform ensures that we can borrow competitively, that our rates are competitive at the lowest possible spread. We are also doing complementary economic reforms, and I will explain some of them later. Securing property rights, enhancing competition, improving food security, and simplifying regulations. I'll just highlight some of them. We are doing rice tariffication, and I will explain what is that reform and the benefit of that reform. We are improving food security primarily through rice tariffication. We are simplifying regulations primarily through the Ease of Doing Business Act that mandates minimum number of days, or maximum number of days rather, for licenses and permits to be approved. We are also going to go forward with enhancing competition, beginning with the third telecom unit or company. So this is a comprehensive reform that can only be understood if you understand and see it from a package, not individual provisions or what you just like. Now, on tax reform, we have the following packages. Some of them are familiar to you, some are new. But I assure you, as of today, all of them are already in Congress, waiting to be filed or are being heard. Last year, we approved Package 1. Many of you supported, and you are benefiting today from lower income taxes, except if you are 8 million and above taxable income. Some of you are experiencing higher prices. I will explain later which are caused by trade or the tax reform for acceleration and inclusion, and which are not. Then in Package 1B, we have an amnesty. But we will have to improve the way we govern our taxpayers through bank secrecy relaxation and the automatic exchange of information. Some of you, or many of the people I talk to, insist that BIR must do its share. But how can the BIR do its share if bank accounts are absolutely confidential? And we have no way to exchange information, unlike the US, for instance, or most other countries that I know of. Then we will adjust motor vehicle user tax, the registration fees that we pay every year, which are the same for 14 years already. Meanwhile, the roads are damaged. Then we have Package 2, which is the corporate income and fiscal incentives, which the House version calls trabajo, which stands for, I think, tax reform for accelerated and better opportunities, or close to that. I'm still trying to memorize what that means. Then we have Package 2 Plus, which formerly called Package 5, is about the vices, tobacco, alcohol, mining. Those who contribute to the health and environment issues, we have to get them to pay more. Package 3 is property valuation. Many of you probably are interested in this. And finally, Package 4, capital income and financial taxes. I will focus my discussion today on 1, 2, 3, and 4 and leave the rest. Because we don't have time. Now, let's step back. Why do we need to do policy reform? The main reason is we have many problems in our tax system. For one, we do not adjust the rates to inflation. We have to go to the correct slide. The second, what's an example of a tax we don't adjust to inflation? Excise on gasoline, diesel, 20 years the same rate, which was adjusted only during in this year. The next cause of our weak policy system is special treatment and exemption. We grant today hundreds of laws providing various types of exemptions. It reminds me of my travel around the Philippines. I go to Laguna, there are special delicacies, and every one of them are labeled special. I go to Baguio, Tagaytay, Cebu, Boracay, all of those labels are special, no more regular. Then we have lack of information, or the absolute bank secrecy. Only two countries, Philippines and Lebanon, have such absoluteness. The effect is a system wherein we have the highest rates in the region, income, personal and corporate, both of them, and VAT. But we also have a very narrow base, where we exempt so many sectors, which is causing the inequity, complexity, and inefficiency of the tax system. That is why we are reforming this. In the next slide, you'll see what happened over 20 years, or 30 years rather. Every time we try to raise some taxes, there will be many Republic Acts trying to erode the tax base. So each of these bars, you don't need to read what is inside them, represent the number of Republic Acts enacted over time that are meant to reduce the tax base because of the exemptions and the special treatment. So you can see how many. And in fact, what we counted so far is 300 of them. That is why we propose the tax reform for acceleration and inclusion, or TRAIN, so that we arrive at a simpler, fairer, and more efficient tax system. That is really the content of this whole tax reform. Again, if we are satisfied with business as usual, meaning 6% growth, you will, as middle class and richer members of society, continue to grow richer, while the rest will have very little opportunity, then we do not need a tax reform. However, we are not satisfied with the business as usual. We want higher growth underpinned by investment so that productivity can increase, and therefore poverty, hunger, and inequality will fall. That is really the reason why we do tax reform. Beyond the revenues, is giving equal opportunities to everyone. Now, I won't discuss details of the first package, but I need to explain this somehow so that you will understand the story fully. We exempted the first 250,000 taxable income. A call center agent with a 21,000 monthly salary is used to pay 22,590 in income tax. Under TRAIN, he pays zero. He brings home 22,590. If the wife also is a call center agent, then they bring home close to 45,000. This is a significant amount of money for their food, their travel, or better, for their education, the children's education. Now, we also fixed a very complicated VAT system. We have the highest VAT rate in the region, yet we have the most number of exemptions. Unlike Indonesia or Thailand or Malaysia with much lower rates of VAT and fewer exemptions, we charge one group of people 12% VAT, and then we exempt 100 plus of them, people, sector, or industries from the VAT. There are 56 lines of exemptions in the tax code and 84 special laws granting various exemptions prior to TRAIN. Fortunately, in TRAIN, we were able to reduce that by 54. We still have a lot to go, but it's a good start so that it's fair. Another most misunderstood provision of TRAIN is the fuel excise. We increased diesel from 0 to 2 peso and 50 cents per liter this year. Gasoline from 4 peso 35 cents per liter to 7 peso per liter. When I started driving 1995, 1996, I paid 10 peso per liter for my gasoline. of which 4 peso and 35 cents is the excise. Last year, of course, I took a job, I went to World Bank, I am richer, I have savings, I pay 30 to 40 peso for my gasoline, but I still pay 4 peso and 35 cents per liter on excise after 20 years, and diesel is zero. So many people say that by increasing the excise, it is anti-poor. But what is the reality? The reality is the top 10% of Filipino households consume more than half of fuel products. And the top 1% of Filipino households, I think most of you counted today, consume 13% of fuel products. There's a simple reason. You have cars, 1, 2, or 5. Every time you put a full tank, you pay 2 or 3,000. The bottom 80% do not have cars. They commute. They pay 8 to 10 peso per ride, 200 peso maximum for a jeep, which they share, by the way, with 20 other people or 50 other people in the case of a bus. And therefore, they are the least affected. So, the present system, let me start. The previous system is really a subsidy on the rich. It is a disguised subsidy on the poor. That is why Malaysia and Indonesia in the past years removed fuel subsidy and targeted the poor and helped them through cash transfer. That's exactly what we're doing today. We increase the excise on gasoline and diesel. By the way, how many of you have SUVs running on diesel? You get the point. And then, so that we make the tax system far more progressive, and then we help the bottom 80% through our social mitigating measures. And I will explain that later. That is why I think by doing this reform, not only do we protect the environment and the health, we make the tax system far more progressive. Finally, how many of you take maintenance medicine for diabetes and complications around diabetes? My estimate from data from PhilHealth is that we spend somewhere between 14 billion per year on dialysis treatment. And the average Filipino who has diabetes spends around 20,000, I believe, per year on diabetes medicine maintenance, which you have to take for life. Plus, we have not yet counted all the complications and the other related diseases. So every year, we're spending 100 to 200 billion in diabetes maintenance. By the way, do you know that when you drink your soft drink, it has 34 or 36 grams of sugar? And 1 teaspoon is 4 grams. Therefore, you are taking 9 teaspoons of sugar every time you drink a can of soft drink. So this is a health measure because we have a young dynamic labor force and we cannot afford to have them grow unproductive and at risk of this disease. So when you put them all together, for the average taxpayer, it is a net gain. Even if prices increase and the secondary effect from trade, the lower income tax is sufficient enough to offset. Now the problem is, there are many more reasons why inflation is high beyond trade, which I will explain later. And that is, I think, why we have to discuss inflation first before I go to package 2, 3, and 4. So let's go to inflation. What's the latest number, which I'm sure you follow? Year on year, 5.7%. Month on month, 0.5. Year to date, 4.5. I would not consider this hyperinflationary as I've seen in a newspaper. You should see Venezuela, 1,000,000%. However, it is no doubt increasing. And the first thing I would want to explain is to show what is caused by trade or the tax reform and what is not. Because unfortunately, what is reported in media and social media and some misguided analysts is that everything is due to trade. Notice that in January, there was a previous slide. Notice that in January, month on month was 0.9, and then in February it was 0.8, and then it went to 0.5 and zeroed in May. So there was a strong sense that inflation was very well on the downward trend, except that in June and July it shot up again. So we are trying to understand this better. So let me explain the reason for this unprecedented change. One way to look at the drivers of inflation in July is to rank them according to their contribution to the 5.7% year-on-year inflation. Number one is electricity, gas, and other fuel. I will explain later what is due to train and what is not. And in fact, most of them are not due to train. By the way, when you look at year-on-year inflation, you're looking at everything that happened since July last year, August, September, December. So half of the year is definitely has nothing to do with trade or tax reform. And later you'll see that the ones that are adjusted in 2018 also have not less to do with trade. The second problem is fish. We have depleted our municipal fisheries because of overfishing, and climate change has moved the fish away from Philippine waters. Number 3 is the operation of your cars, and I'll show later what is trade and what is non-trade. Number 4 is rice, definitely not trade, something to do with our bad rice policy. And number 5 is vegetables, something to do with the continuous rain in the last 6 weeks. Another way to look at inflation contribution is by the products that caused or had the highest increase in year-on-year inflation. So let's begin with tobacco. Next slide. 29.4%. Why? Because I will explain later. Better compliance. People paying taxes. Companies paying taxes. And then you will also see the operation of cars, vegetable, and electricity in the top 5. So let me give an example why year-on-year inflation. I'm sure you know this, but somehow it is not conveyed properly. It's not a good indicator of whether one policy reform is the contributor of higher inflation. So look at Meralco. Total accumulated increase, 3.47 peso per kilowatt hour, of which 1.44 came from last year. So definitely around, I would say around 40% has nothing to do with trade. And then in February, March, April, and July, they also increased by a cumulative of 2 peso and 3 centavos per kilowatt hour. Some probably due to trade, but mostly due to the FIT, adjustment in the FIT in tariff, or requests for adjustment from previous quarters that were only recently approved. So we have to put that in context because most of our power source are not diesel or bunker. There are other factors or other sources that we hardly tax in trade. There are 5 main causes for inflation. Some of you probably know this, but from the looks of the reports in the media and interviews of analysts, I don't think everyone got it still. First, there are many external factors. The US sanction on Iran, which escalated again this week, and the increase in the US interest rates. So that has led to significant adjustments in the imported price of fuel. When we proposed trade in January 2017, the Dubai crude was $53 per barrel. The peso was 49.74 per dollar. When the House passed trade, it improved actually to 49 and 49. When President Duterte signed trade, the Dubai crude increased to 60, which is a bit high, but still within our target, and the peso remained at 50. So what happened in the last 7 months was unprecedented. Dubai crude reaching 73, and the peso reaching 53. Of course, this is the part where inflation is largely important, and you do not use monetary policy to address a supply shock, which some analysts want us to do. Number 2, tax reform. We never hid the fact that tax reform would contribute to inflation, and we said it was additional 0.7. But in reality, our latest estimate in the contribution is 0.4. In other words, for every 100 pesos in additional spending, only around 7 pesos is due to trade. And there's a simple explanation. If you fill your gasoline tank, you pay around 11.6 pesos per liter more. If you fill your SPG Fortuner or Innova tank, you pay 14.3 pesos per liter more in diesel. However, what does the trade law say? The trade law says that only 3 peso is due to trade for gasoline, and only 2.8 is due to trade in the case of diesel. Let me explain. That includes the VAT. The 2 peso and 50 cents excise plus the VAT. The contribution of trade to your pump price is 20 or 26% only, less than a fourth on average. So when people say that the prices of fuel increased due to trade, there is very little basis because most of them are imported. Unfortunately, many gasolines around the country, I don't know why they do it, they put a poster that says trade compliant. That probably gave the idea to the users that the whole increase is due to trade. So there's a lot of miscommunication and understanding. Number 3, we are giving more money to the people's pocket, 32.5 billion per month. And that is inflationary because 90% is spent. Where is it coming from? 12 billion from lower income tax, 2 billion from the unconditional cash transfer we give to the poor, 15 billion new jobs in construction because 30% of construction cost is labor, and free tuition because students who used to pay for UP education do not pay anymore. By the way, there are many anecdotes that their parents buy cars for them. Therefore, one idea I have is we have to auction the parking slots in the state universities and colleges to offset some of this revenue. So this is the demand side of thing. This is actually good part of inflation. People can afford. Look at retail sales. McDonald's, Jollibee, Max, and the stores. First quarter, very good, except for just one store. I don't know why. Second quarter, the data we are seeing also very good, double digits. So how can it be that these stores which sell unnecessary goods and service, meaning they are not the basic goods and service, grow double digits when the economy supposedly is buffeted by so many storms, including higher inflation? You would see first thing, because of higher inflation, these unnecessary consumption items fall, but they do not. So we are confident that while inflation has increased, purchasing power has also increased. Number 4, we have a problem with our rice supply. NFA did not buy enough palay during the harvest, and despite importation, rice supply still decreased, and importation was delayed. But this underscores our poor policy on rice. In the country, we have achieved 90% rice self-sufficiency, meaning 90% of our need for rice is locally produced. And we never hit 100 on a sustained basis, but I think 90% is something we should be very proud of. Why? Because for a country that is mountainous, buffeted by typhoons almost every other week, with a high degree of land inequity and no natural irrigation, we are able to produce 90% of our rice, but at a high cost. Our neighbors, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, previously, no typhoon. By the way, we shield Vietnam from typhoon, so we should charge Vietnam. More equal land distribution, natural irrigation from the Meadow River, and less mountains. They produce 100%, but at a cheaper cost. So, what is the consequence? In the next slide, you will see we pay double for rice, 36 pesos per kilogram compared to as low as 16 pesos per kilogram in our neighbors. So our present policy of rice self-sufficiency protects the farmers but penalizes everyone else, forcing them to pay double for rice. That is why you may have heard in the news that we are pushing for rice tariffication. Let those cheaper rice come in, pay a tariff, so that we can lower prices and inflation. Next slide. No matter what we do in the past, we have not sufficiently addressed our supply gap. That is why we have to move from this quantitative restriction to freer tariffs and importation. That is why we propose the following in the rice tariffication bill. What we want, which is not necessarily what Congress will pass, is to limit the mandate of NFA to emergency buffer stocking, convert the QR to tariffs, remove the import licensing of NFA, allow the traders to import freely, and use the collection from tariff revenue to improve productivity of farmers. If we do this, our inflation will fall by 0.4 percentage points. rice price in the market may fall anywhere from 4 to 7 peso per kilogram. And we will have a far more competitive manufacturing sector because minimum wages need not adjust every year. This is the grandeur of this reform, which we have to take as part of the package. Finally, tobacco. 99% increase in tobacco inflation, but trade is only responsible for 1/5 because we raised the excise to 35 peso per pack. 4/5 is due to better compliance. Why? Because a major cigarette company was caught evading billions in taxes and now is run by a foreign company, is now paying the right taxes from 1.5 billion a month to 3.5 billion a month. Therefore, people have to pay higher prices for tobacco. And that is why tobacco inflation is 29%. In other words, if you want inflation to be low, the best way to do it, I think, is to promote smuggling and tax evasion. But we're doing it right this time. That's why inflation is higher. Of the 5.7, 0.3 is due to better compliance from tobacco. Now, what happened in the first quarter? While inflation rate increased to 4.3, both self-rated hunger and poverty fell. So, at least in the first quarter, we are not doing bad because we know that while inflation increased, purchasing power enabled people to meet their needs. Therefore, hunger and poverty fell. But what happened in the second quarter? We have a bit of a problem. Inflation inched up to 5.2%. Self-rated poverty increased to 48%. However, hunger fell. So we have a mixed story. I think the reason here is that the cash transfers help the poor. The cash transfer that we give to the poorest 50% are helping the poor. What we might be lacking in support are those around the minimum wage. Not too poor to receive cash transfer, but not too rich to enjoy lower income tax. So we will do better. In fact, in the next slide, you will see that in Luzon, the self-rated poverty fell. That is a black line. But in the rest of the country, it increased. So probably we still have to improve the distribution of how we support and protect the poor. So we are doing that. Then there's another survey by Pulse Asia. Pulse Asia said that in March of 2018, inflation was the second most pressing concern. Of course, it became headlines, and guess who took the blame, who they blame? Trade. So I looked at all the surveys of Pulse Asia from 2010, and I realized that inflation was always the number one or the second pressing concern, even when inflation was zero or negative. So what that means is, of course, the latest number and result was politicized, but the main issue is structural. Even when inflation was so low, people still think that inflation is the number one concern. That's why the solution is structural. It is not temporary, like reducing excise tax on fuel, for instance. Now, we are doing a lot to protect the poor. We can always do better. Unconditional cash transfer to the poorest 10 million, fuel vouchers for the public utility jeeps, and the social welfare card through the national ID. By the way, the President signed national ID this last Monday. It's a breakthrough because moving forward, it will be far easier to help the poor because I know them by name and address. I can open bank accounts for every one of them. Financial inclusion will tremendously improve. And I can download support, cash transfer, and any services from a targeted basis directly to their accounts. So this reform, I think, is transformational. So look at this reform from that bigger perspective. Now, having delegated the elephant, the big elephant, which is inflation, to a smaller problem, I hope, after my explanation, let me now talk about package 2. I'm sure many of you are concerned, some of you neutral, but let's see the bigger picture. We have the highest corporate income tax rate in the region at 30%. Most countries have gone down to 20 to 25. So without doubt, we're going to reduce the corporate income tax rate. But we'll do that responsibly. On the other hand, we have 14 investment promotion agencies like PEZA, BOI. Here are the logos. Logos there. They're all authorized by law to grant tax incentives, and the DOF is not a member in 12 out of 14 of them, so we have no say in the grant of incentives. While we are mandated to collect to fund a budget close to 4 trillion. Going back, another problem of our incentive system is that we have so many tax laws granting incentives, special laws outside the tax code. 123 investment laws and 192 non-investment laws. Then we have this peculiarity in the whole wide world. Income tax holiday that is followed by the 5% gross income earned tax in lieu of all taxes, national and local, given forever, perpetual, everlasting. Whatever is the performance or contribution of that firm. Fortunately, since 2015, we have the PIMTA law, and we are going to show you the results of how much it costs to give incentives. So our objective really is to keep the incentives that benefit the economy and remove those that do not. That is the main battle, the logic behind package 2. Look at the Philippines. After a 4-year ITH, we give up to 8 years of extension, followed by the gross income earned tax, which is 5% in lieu of all taxes, both national and local, forever. All the countries would have a ceiling. So I'll not go to the details. Our corporate income tax, or CIT revenue, is increasing. It's quite good, but that's because the economy is increasing its size. What people don't see is that our efficiency is very bad. With a 20% corporate income tax rate, Thailand collects 6.1% of GDP in taxes. Vietnam, 7.3%. Philippines, with a 30% rate, we only collect 3.7%. It's not mainly due to tax evasion. 2/3 of that is due to exemptions. A system wherein we make small and medium enterprises pay 30% and exempt many other firms, mostly the large and foreign ones, so that we have a high rate and narrow base system. Now, this is something we want to correct and make it more fair. Now, what is the cost of tax incentives? 2015, the full data we have, 301 billion, and you will see the breakdown. So the question is it worth giving that much incentives previously? So you'll see the breakdown. So is it worth giving that much incentives? Of course, the other problem is if you have a dual system, you make some sectors pay 30%, and then the rest pay as low as 6.3% on their net income. So this is an inequity that we are trying to correct. By the way, there are close to 97,000 SMEs paying the regular rate and around 3,000 firms paying the special rate or the zero rate. This is something you will correct. Now let's look at the benefits. One reason why we give incentive is to promote FDI. Surely our FDI has increased from $1 to $2 billion per year to 8, and then last year, $10 billion. So fantastic. However, despite giving incentives forever, we are not doing well relative to our other country neighbors. So Philippines, the red bar, $8 billion. Other countries with time-bound incentives that are more performance-based can do much better. And relative to our $300 billion economy, we're really not generating much FDI. Now, there's a news in recent weeks saying that the FDI increased by 43.5%. So this is a good sign. However, the competitor newspaper reported that FDI pledges dropped 37.9%. And if you read the article, tax reform is blamed for this drop because it's scaring investors. So fortunately, the newspaper, which I have to explain to you, showed a time series data, the one that I circled. Anyway, it's not very clear, so let me reproduce it for you. In 2017 first quarter, we attracted 23 billion in FDI pledges, investment pledges. Then in the first quarter of 2018, it dropped to 14 billion, so almost 50%. So of course, the newspaper, quoting the opposition, blamed the tax reform, notably the peso kickers. However, why is it that in 2010, the pledges dropped from 47 billion to 22 billion, and then further to 19 billion. Why is it that in 2013, from 50 billion, it dropped to 37 billion, and then 22 billion, and then it increased, when there was no train or tax reform? Well, of course, the reality is, of course, we do not dispute that tax reform probably scared some. But historically, there were far bigger scares. The port congestion, the corruption maybe, the inefficiency of government, the bad infra, all these contributed and is still manifesting. Just like the inflation problem, prices increase, blame tax reform. Another is, consider the analogy as a student who never studies and failed his exam and blame the teacher who so happens to be bad as a reason for the failure. So I think this is what's happening today also. So again, what I want to say is we don't discount the fact that tax reform may have scared some, but the bigger reason I believe is structural in nature. Another way to look at it is our exports. Exports in peso or dollar terms have been increasing, that is a blue line, but as a share of GDP, it has been falling, suggesting that we are losing competitiveness. So again, why give incentives forever if firms do not perform? Compare that to Vietnam, with time-bound and more performance-based incentive, it increases the brown line. The Philippines, dotted black, continue to fall. Next slide. Although our labor productivity adjusted for inflation has been increasing, that's the blue line, wages continue to be flat. And this is a product of poor education, poor health, poor infrastructure that erodes productivity and also the lack of competition. So these are the things that we want to address. And by addressing them, we don't mean getting the money from heaven for free. We have to do the tax reform to fund better schooling, for instance. And finally, when investors are asked in a more unbiased manner, such as the 2017 World Economic Forum, why they don't come to the Philippines, they don't cite tax rates as a number one reason. They cite the inefficiency of government, the inadequacy of infra, corruption, and regulations. So my main message today in doing package 2 is to strike a better balance. And instead of giving incentives as a band-aid solution, which we have done for 50 years, and besides, I don't seem to see better productivity for the entire country, why don't we strike a better balance? Give incentives to those who perform, take it away from those who don't, and use that money to provide better services and infrastructure for all, not only for a select few. Our cost-benefit analysis shows, in summary, that we spent 301 billion for incentives. But on the benefit side, we do not see, on average, any difference between those who received incentives and those who did not. In fact, many of those who received incentives pay far more dividends, suggesting that they are very profitable, and questions why we give them more incentives. So the details are not discussed. They're available in our DOF website. Now, what do we propose? Yesterday, the House Committee passed its bill, and Senator Soto filed the Senate version. So this one compares the key provisions, but I'll just tell you one provision, the reduction in the corporate income tax. We had originally wanted a conditional reduction so that we first identify savings from the incentives we will be rationalizing, and then instead of putting that in the treasury to increase our revenue, we convert that into lower income tax rates so that we are always revenue neutral. However, the bill of Senator Soto wants to reduce it to 25% immediately. That would cost me 130 billion immediately and 3.7% of GDP in deficit. The one that the House passed is a gradual reduction every 2 years by 2 points to 20% in 10 years. So those are the key features. Anyway, we are still in step 1 of 5 approval process, so many things can happen. But for sure, you will see the corporate income tax rate fall. But also for sure, we are going to rationalize the incentives that are unnecessary. So going forward, we are going to abide by 4 key principles whenever we grant incentives. And I'm sure you will agree with me, the principles. Performance-based. When I give an incentive, I want the firm to produce jobs, meet export target, or raise productivity. So there will be a contract. The contract is how well the firm contribute to the economy. It's like you got a scholarship, you're given a scholarship, but the performance expected of you is to meet a passing grade and graduate. There's no such thing as a scholarship that gives it forever, whether or not you fail or pass. That is the same logic. When you get a loan from the banks, the bank will expect an ROI, and you pay one of these days. The next is targeted. We do not give incentives to 300 different groups, as the number of special laws that I showed a while ago suggests. We give it to the most important drivers of the economy that are key to our future growth. Next, time bound. There should be sunset provision. Again, you give your children allowance up to college, and you expect your children to work hard for the rest of their lives. You don't give your children allowance for 40 years. Unfortunately, we have been giving incentives for more than 30 or close to 40 years. And finally, transparent. If I give an incentive to this table, I have to ask your table to pay for their incentive. So, because nothing is free. So, your table would definitely want to know what are you doing with your hard-earned money. So those are the principles we're fighting. I will not go to the details, but these are the possible menu of incentives that we will give. There will be ITH, we will convert the 5% gross to 15% net. There will be special deductions, there will be exemptions from customs duties, but there are two that we will not give if I were, or the DOI proposal were to be successful. We will not give VAT as an incentive. Why? Because the VAT is a consumption tax. It's not meant for incentive. The logic behind the VAT is you buy, you import, you pay VAT. Then if you export, you get a refund. It's not good policy to use or treat it as an incentive. And then let the local government, which are autonomous by law, grant their own incentives or levy their own taxes, instead of committing them to something because our national law says so. So those are the major changes. Now, what are we going to do with the current recipients of incentives, those who have been wearing diapers far too long? We will respect the ITH until they expire, and those forever incentives, we will give 2 to 5 years to sunset them. For instance, if you have been receiving incentives for more than 10 years, we will give you 2 more years. And then, once it expires, you have 2 options. You pay the regular rate, which is 28% by that time, or you apply for the new incentives if you qualify. And those receiving below 5 years, they can avail of the incentives for 5 more years. This is basically calculated based on return on investment. Just to give you an example how many firms have been enjoying, 645 have been enjoying these incentives for up to 40 years, beyond 15. And they are, of course, the sectors or industries or firms which the government has helped for many decades, and I think it is fair that after being helped for many decades, they help back the country in return. So that's really the story behind Package 2. Now let me quickly discuss Package 3 and 4 because I don't have much time. Package 3 is about property valuation. What's wrong with our current system? I don't know if some of you are real estate brokers. We have multiple overlapping valuation, outdated valuation, the costs that you have to incur because of the foregone revenue and the transaction costs, no single agency responsible, and absent a comprehensive database. By the way, I tell my friends, if you are an honest broker, you would love this reform. But if not, then you will not like this reform. Why? Because we are going to harmonize the valuation and address all these problems. More than 23 national government agencies doing valuation, more than 1,000 LGUs trying to do valuation at the local level, each with their own methodology, some guess, with the local assessed valuation very different from the zonal valuation, very different also from the value that you put on your deed of sale, and also very different from the real value that you keep in your bedroom. And you will see the discrepancies. That's why right-of-way is always a problem, because when the government buys a property, when you have a property, you pay very low tax, right? For instance, Makati is not adjusted for more than 25 years. Quezon City adjusted after 20 years. So you are happy to pay low taxes because of the undervaluation, because then they are not adjusted for 20 years. But if the government were to expropriate your property to build a highway, you would not agree on the assessed value. You would demand your market value. So there's a disconnect. That's why right of way takes 10 years. So with this reform, infra can advance faster. There's another problem with our valuation system. The tendency is for richer LGUs, those that are not read in the right map, to be the LGUs that have not adjusted for many years, therefore creating much inequity in the valuation system. The poor LGUs update, the richer LGUs don't. Next problem, I'll give an example. This is public information anyway. The scheduled market value for Ayala Avenue is 40,000 per square. The zonal value is 439,000 per square, but the market value is 700,000 per square, 18 times the tax that we lose from those occupying property along Ayala Avenue. And 13 times in the Gaspi Village and 4 times in the Eurotrip C5. Massive amounts of revenues uncollected because of the weak valuation, which we are trying to address. As a result, our collection from property taxes have actually fallen drastically. I'll not go to the details. The benefit of the reform are the following, so you can read it. But the general idea here is to have a solid basis for valuation. Of course, the LGUs can adjust the tax rates so that it will not be hypervalued. Let me now end with package 4. I understand from my facilitator that you want me to discuss this, but you can ask questions later. This is very new, but basically we're going to reduce the number of rates from 80 to 42. The 80 rates come from so many complexity in the financial tax system on interest, capital gains, dividends, and so on. And the rates range from 0 to 7.5 to 10 to 12 to 15 to 20 to exempt taxability rates, 0.6 stock transaction tax, and so on. We're going to reduce it to 42. Of course, there will be gainers and losers, so I can discuss later if you wish. And there will be several special laws granting exemptions that we will also rationalize. So the end goal is to have a revenue-neutral, harmonized system wherein financial products are taxed similarly, not because of maturity, currency, residency, purpose, or other factors, but because of the inherent risk of that financial product. Finally, I have talked too much. I just want to say 3 things. Number 1, this tax reform is bridging the future. Many of us have the luxury of growing up comfortably with an aircon room, in a car, in a good school. Chances are, even if you do badly in school, you'll succeed because you have the branding. A poor student, even if he tries very hard, probably won't succeed as well because there's no aircon, he has to walk a lot, it's noisy, he cannot study, there are no electricity, no clean water, he can sit most of the time. So think of this tax reform, especially the first package, as bridging the future for the far majority of our countrymen. And it's not easy to do tax reform because when I ask people like you, if you want tax reform or you want change, many of you would agree and many of you support it. But when I ask one particular group, like the co-ops, or the BPO, or the senior citizen, or the energy sector, or so on, to give up some of their perks, they disagree. So no one really wants to change. In fact, many people come to me and say, I support your tax reform, except for this item. And if I add all of them, I have no more reform left. And finally, of course, no one wants to lead the reform. So I understand, it's difficult. But if you think as a package, think collectively, think of your future and your children and your grandchildren, you probably will understand more. So, to end, you visit our website and Facebook account for more information, and we hope that you will help us and be our partners for change. In fact, you get your smartphone now, You hold it, get it, go to Facebook, you look for DOFPH, Department of Finance, and like it. So that you will get daily updates on what this reform is about. So with that, I hope I did some justice to your conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Undersecretary Karl Chua. Very interesting. Karl, it's always very fascinating to hear policy being formulated from the government's point of view, from those who are tasked to implement it. We realize, actually, it probably must be a thankless job sometimes when several people, always have vested interest, go to you for your very narrow interest. But looking at it from a whole and this sort of a helicopter point of view gives us a better appreciation of every interest that we have to balance and the overarching principle that animates these tax reform. So thank you very much for that. So we'd like to thank you for remaining on stage and seated at the entrance. We would like to remind everyone to use your PIC 2018 conference app. Our live Q&A is available through the app.
So may we now please call on stage Mr. Erwin Abante, Trustee and Vice President for Industry Relations of CFA Society Philippines and Vice President and Compliance Officer of Energy Development Corporation to moderate the Q&A session.
Good afternoon, everyone. You say Karl Chua, very informative presentation. I like the way you outlined the rationale from the why and then until the how and the benefit of the tax reform now. So while we're waiting for some of the questions to come in, I'd like to ask a few questions about the tax reform. A lot of people are saying that we don't need tax reform. What we need is to actually improve the collection efficiency of the government. And in fact, this morning, one of the levers for increasing the efficiency of tax collection is digitalization. So can you comment on this now?
Hello. Well, that's a good question. Actually, we need both. And I would argue that the best way to address the inefficiency of the BIR and BOC is not to force on them more regulations that they cannot understand, and also taxpayers. From an institutional economics point of view, I don't know if you have studied this in school or in graduate school, the best way to address an inefficiency is by simplifying regulations. The more complex your regulation is, the more it invites discretion, therefore negotiation, and therefore tax evasion and corruption. So what we're doing here is to clean up our policy so that it becomes simpler, so that you will not be fooled and you will no longer fool someone. So we have to do both. It is very difficult to find actually an example wherein the number one driver of reform or success is anti-corruption. In most countries I know of, it is fixing a bad policy. It is removing bad rules that create the incentive for bad behavior. So we're doing both. So in my reform, I am cleaning up the tax system, reducing all the exemptions and the special treatment. And on the other side, the BIR and BOC will have to clean its ranks. But with a simpler policy, I believe they will perform better. And you know as a taxpayer that they cannot fool you. And they know as a tax authority, you cannot fool them. So that's the story behind this reform.
Next question is, inflation is a hot topic now, and it's good that you explain the contribution of the trade in the inflation, about 0.4 to 5.7%. So let's take that aside for now, but I read that about not more than 30% of the increased revenue from trade will be used for the social protection program. So this is the Tawid Pasada, the unconditional cash transfers, and all that. No? And you've mentioned about 32 billion pesos. In fact, for UP alone, no, application for I think the next school year, it increased by about 67%. No? So what if, for example, the projections in terms of additional revenue does not pan out, and then you're faced with inflation? So how do you bridge the gap? What's the backup measure for government?
Well, you know, the tax reform this year is expected to generate 90 billion, close to 90 billion. In which 30% or 27 billion is going to social services, primarily through the cash transfer. Now, as I mentioned a while ago, at least for the oil prices, not more than 25% is due to the excise and the VAT around the tax reform. So the far majority is imported inflation, which we are trying to manage. So we are reviewing the budget for next year as we speak, where I came from, why I'm late, to see how much legroom we will need to protect the poor. But so far, next year's budget, you will see a 20 billion additional amount for social mitigating measures. So I think that's, what was your other question regarding this topic?
Yeah, well, with respect to what if, for example, the projections does not pan out, so how do we bridge the gap? Where would the government source the funding for the subsidy, practically for the marginalized sector of the society?
There are 3 ways to do this. We still have the other packages, which I hope will advance. And the speed of recent weeks suggests that we can hope for immediate passage of some of these reforms. 1B, 2, and rice tarification. Then, if that doesn't work, we're going to weigh if whether we slightly increase the deficit or we cut some unnecessary spending, especially from the sectors or agencies that underspend. So those are the things that we're trying to balance. So the most important, I think, is not the amount, but the confidence that investors have that we are in full control. And there's a plan. There's a reform that is going to bring this country forward.
Then talking about the packages, I understand from the past, tax reforms were submitted to Congress in a one-time, big-time reform. But right now we're doing several packages now. What's the rationale for the order? And then secondly, we also noticed, for example, Package 4 talks about capital income tax and financial taxes. But in Package 1, it includes already an increase in the stock transaction tax from 0.5% to 0.6%. And then capital gain tax now from 5/10% to 15%. So shouldn't that belong to Train 4? What was the dynamics behind it?
Okay, except for Package 1, there's no ordinal value around the numbering. So in fact, in reality, it became 1, 5, 2, 4, 3. So first, I want to clarify that there's no ranking or order. It's just A, B, C, D, E, or you can call it package star, package circle, package square. Unfortunately, Congress decided otherwise on how it wants to do tax reform. That's their prerogative. One senator told me this is really how democracy works. You propose, you don't get everything you want. So that's the logic. We see a different value, they see a different value, and in the end, this is the best approach or product that we can offer.
And then some questions from the audience now, from Mr. Fintech. This morning, Dr. Joanna Chua mentioned that the Philippines can benefit from the trade war between the US and China. With Train, particularly Train 2, which removes the incentives to ESA firms, for example, how do we make sure that we realize this potential benefit? Won't it discourage potential investors in country?
First of all, when we designed our tax reform, we wanted everyone in this country to contribute. So in Package 1, we asked the households to contribute. Lower income tax for broader consumption base. In Package 2, we asked the corporate sector to contribute. In Package 3, the property owners. In Package 4, the investors, those with money. In Package 5, which is now Package 2+, we asked the miners, polluters, smokers, drinkers, gamblers to contribute. So I cannot think of a way why some groups would like to be exempted, no matter how special they are. So that includes probably some sectors that have been enjoying incentives for so long. As I mentioned, Package 2 is all about fairness and accountability. We will continue to give incentives, but the firms should prove to us that they deserve it. So why would a firm be afraid of this reform if they are performing? You can enjoy the incentives forever, so long as every 5 to 7 years you reapply. And we have a way to gauge your performance. course, for a firm that is enjoying the incentive forever, eating or taking advantage of someone else's hard-earned money or tax payment, and there's no accountability because we cannot mention or measure the jobs, then that's the problem that we have in the current system. So I assure you that almost half of the firms we think will retain incentives because they are performing. But the other half, they have to rethink. If they want to enjoy incentives, they have to contribute more.
But are you not afraid, for example, if you take out incentives, that will actually prompt those companies to pass on the lost incentives to the public and therefore result in inflation? What do you say about that?
On the other hand, we are lowering the corporate income tax for 97,000 SMEs, which will reduce inflation. So there's always a balancing of trade-off. So I cannot satisfy each and every one because I have a scarce resource which I have to find the best use. So in this case, while I understand that the firms will pass on additional costs, I also understand that for some sectors, they got a 10% revenue bonus because of the exchange rate depreciation. I also understand that most of these firms pay more dividends than incentives they receive. So they have been enjoying and retaining high levels of profitability. So those are the considerations.
Probably last question from Ven Guche. I hope I mentioned your name right. How will federalism impact current efforts on tax reform? And this also goes with the change in leadership in Congress, the midterm election next year, inflation, and then federalism. So how will it impact?
It will impact a lot. So that is why we have to do the most basic. By the way, do you know what is the number one necessary condition for federalism to work? Would you know, sir? Yes, I didn't hear, but I think it is something like a strong central state. Is that what you said? Well, okay, that is related. Anyway, for any federalism to work, the prerequisite is a strong central state. Otherwise, if you have a weak state, you will collapse like Somalia because you have different factions trying to carve territories. We need a strong central state to guide national policy, international relations, monetary policy, defense. So, I don't know when federalism will happen, in what form, but this tax reform lays the foundation for a solid and better tax system, which hopefully federal states will follow and take example. So, I think that's one way to get this debate on federalism started.
Actually, that's our last question, but we won't let you go easily yet. No? So since you're the poster boy of the train, what I wanted to do, if you can indulge me in a minute or so, I'll ask a few questions. I don't know if you're familiar with Fast Talk. So these are, it's a multiple choice question, A or B. Yes, so there are no right or wrong answers, you just need to choose A or B.
There media here.
So for the audience, take note that the response of Yusek Chua is his personal view and opinion, and there's no way the official stand of the Department of Finance. So don't quote him, and no judging, please. No. So just a minute or so now, so that we know you better. So are you ready?
I'm not sure.
Okay, let's begin now. Marvel or DC Comics?
I don't know.
I choose one.
Maybe DC.
DC. Batman or Superman?
Superman.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Trek.
Jadine or Katniel? Jadine or Katniel?
I don't know that.
Let's get that. Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
Harry Potter.
Who do you root for in the UAAP? Ateneo or UP? Because you came from both areas.
Ateneo.
Monetary policy tomorrow. Raise rates by 25 bips or 50 bips? Again, no judging, personal views.
Some prudential measures. That I cannot answer.
Okay.
I'm sure someone will spin a story.
E-books or paperback? E-books or paperback?
Paper. I'm still not transitioning.
Who would you rather have as president? Vladimir Putin or Donald Trump?
What a question.
If you reflect.
No, I think Donald Trump.
Okay.
Coffee.
Coffee.
Some entertainment.
No need to explain. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Charter change, yes or no?
Yes.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Vice ganda or the vice president?
Pass. Vice President.
Chicken McDo or Chicken Joy?
Chicken Joy.
Marian Rivera or Liza Soberano?
Marlon.
Forex rate by the end of the year, close to 52 or close to 55?
Close to the competitive level.
Facebook or LinkedIn?
Facebook.
Okay. Rights over the West Philippine Sea, assert or dissert?
Avoiding questions that will be headlines.
LeBron James or Michael Jordan?
Jordan.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
I'll skip the next one because it might be quoted.
I just asked it.
Financing the bill, ODA or PPP?
Both.
Mother Teresa or your mother-in-law?
Actually, they're both 11.
BMW or Mercedes?
BM.
Hangout, Makati or BGC?
BGC.
Your wife, pretty or drop-dead gorgeous?
Drop dead.
Are you a kapuso or kapamilya?
Kapuso.
Cryptocurrency is the future, yes or no?
Possibly.
Drug war, stop or continue?
Next.
Sara Geronimo or Sara Duterte?
Duterte.
And finally, chocolate or cinnamon?
Chocolate.
Thank you, there you go. Yusek, Karl Kendrick Chua, thank you for releasing the good story.
What's your assessment of my answer?
Very good, actually. Very safe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chua and Mr. Abate. Please do remain on stage for the award of plaques and tokens and a quick photo opportunity with our photographer. We invite again Ms. Cristina Arceo and Ms. Debbie Escribias, Trustee and Vice President of CFA Society Philippines, to do the award. I thought for a while there you said you might have needed your lawyer. Oh, but where's the OGCC? When I need
As we are almost at the end of our conference for today, let us turn our attention to the screen for highlights of today's event.
parang wedding ceremony na sa akin.
Pinahirapan ako po